Welcome to the Manufacturing Masters Podcast with your host, Allison DeFord.
Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Manufacturing Masters Podcast. Allison DeFord here, and I'm super excited about our guest today. You are going to get so much listening to my conversation with Andrew Lavoie. He's the founder of Next Level Group. They do recruiting, and I have to tell you, the topic today is so important right now. We're going to talk about how to be a preferred employer this year. You know, there's so much talk and not just talk, but a real challenge around the skills gap and finding and retaining great talent. And Andrew has so much experience in helping manufacturers not just find the right talent, but to become a preferred employer. That's the shift. And we're going to talk about that today. He's also an expert on the Manufacturing Masters platform. So everybody, we are going to dive into a courageous conversation to help you become a preferred employer. And wait till the end, because Andrew is going to share the number one thing that you could change today to start acting like a preferred employer. Everybody, here we grow. Andrew Lavoie, we're so excited to have you on the podcast. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Today, we've got I feel like a very relevant topic. Manufacturers are struggling with finding enough talent. And you've got several amazing videos on the Manufacturing Masters platform that actually taught me a lot. And I think that we can help our listeners how to overcome, right? Finding the talent. I think what a lot of people are missing is you have to start inside rather than outside. And that's part of the problem. So today you are going to share with our listeners how to become a preferred employer this year. And two things that I got from watching your videos were the two biggest things that an employer can do to attract the right talent, right? Because you can't just hope to find it. You want to be the thing that they're attracted to. The two things you talk about the most are listen and communicate. And I guess what I was wondering is if you would elaborate on those two things for a minute of how a manufacturer can be a better listener. What are the ways? And then also the communication.
Yeah, absolutely. And great question. And certainly we have some pillars that we can go into, but to kind of, I guess, answer your question is that when we sit down with our clients, we kind of all ask the same thing. And even if they're a returning client, like, I think 91% or 90% of our clients have been with us for the full 12 years. And we're very fortunate and privileged, but no two conversations are the same. No two timeframes are the same. I mean, there's transition, there's different things that happen. And so we'll typically try to dive into a client's business. And when I say dive in, we'll ask some uncomfortable questions at time. Like, for example, like, what's your scale up plan? Or, if you have some transition or turnover in a specific department, is it greater or less than maybe another department? And is it a managerial type thing? So a lot of the times we'll ask challenging questions, which, sometimes the clients will be taken back a little bit, but they're all important pieces to the puzzle here. And so for me, it's about making sure that we're listening, because candidates and future employees and prospective employees are certainly listening onto this on the street. So whether they're hearing it from I'll say maybe the competition, where they're currently working, maybe it's from a family friend that's working at a specific location or whatnot. but things are always said, and they're not always in the best light per se. So I think companies have to do a great job of trying to dive into that and what really makes you I'll say the Stanley Cup champion or Super Bowl champion of your industry. And a lot of the times the clients can't answer that. And that's a challenge, because for us, when we're promoting your business to a prospective candidate, for example, we need to know all those nuggets, right? So why would, and I always position it this way, why would I want to go to work for your company today? What has changed in the last 3 to 6 months or a year or whatnot? And why would I want to work for a specific supervisor sort of thing? And then we start to unpack that, because it's important to find the right cultural fit, even though we say, oh, well, we're a company of 500 and this is our culture. Well, okay, that's great. But like it or not, different departments have different cultures, because there's no two managers the same sort of thing.
Right.
So what we like to do is we'll try to ask challenging questions, and then we sit back and listen, and then we get curious about how you answered that. So curiosity is the key in all of this, and then we'll continue to poke and prod until we get to where we're going to go. But just to kind of come back full circle is that, how do we promote you as the leader within the industry? And a lot of times it's like, well, we pay the best. Well, not every employee necessarily, that's not important to every single employee out there. Right. So there's many challenges. When we speak to candidates out there, your need versus my need versus somebody else's need could be completely different. It could be a hybrid option, could be a remote option because that person has family. It could be money, it could be vacation time. It could be there's no more opportunity for advancement or personal growth, or their training has come to an end and they just need change sort of thing. So there's all kinds of different issues or little nuggets that when we're promoting your business, we really need to dive into. So when we tell people that, when we ask people, what have you done recently for a job posting? And if we were to go evaluate that job posting, we can tell that there's been no thought. It was something that's been just kind of regurgitated over the last 5 years sort of thing, and it continues to turn over. And you need to change with the times. And that's one of our 10 pillars that we have when trying to help promote you as a championship team. So you have to evolve with the times. You have to continue to change. The internet is changing. Things are changing. Employees are changing. Other companies are adapting, and you have to be able to promote that. So when we're talking about a championship job ad per se, it's how can you put the most in the backpack while capturing somebody's interest and not just have filler words or whatnot within that job post. So it's like, it could be something as simple as, we get Friday afternoons off, or, we celebrate everybody's birthday on a Friday, whatever the case is. But all these little nuggets, it's an important piece, because that also sets up the framework for the type of culture, or what am I getting myself into? Right. If, is the grass really greener if I make this change sort of thing? So a lot of people will say, well, no, we'll keep it generic and then we'll filter through. That doesn't necessarily mean the right person is going to apply for that specific or to that specific job post. So.
Yeah. And I feel like based on what you just said, it feels like input equals output. And actually, I'm thinking of flipping it. What you put out there is what you're going to get back. So if you're frustrated, if you're not, let's say they're not working with a recruiter or someone like you, and they've been trying it on their own. I think the one thing I learned from your videos is to not only to be a preferred employer, you also need to work more creatively with a recruiter, right? You need to do these same things, the listening, the communicating. It's like being a good client or being a good customer. but it starts with you and your recruiter. Not, I don't think I'm saying this well. It's like all the work that you do up front as an employer within the company, and then working with someone like you, is going to determine the results of the talent that you get back. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I'll kind of, I guess maybe shorten that up a little bit, is that there's recruiters and then there's headhunters. And I don't like using the word headhunter a lot, but just to kind of give you maybe a little bit of just kind of differentiate that a little bit, is that, recruit, and I'll be very careful on this because I'm sure I'll get some pushback, but like, a lot of mistakes, or I guess recruiters will say, well, I'm a recruiter. Okay, perfect. Well, the client should be asking, well, what makes you different? What makes you good? How do I know I can trust you? And I'm not speaking, or this is not about our company at all. All I'm saying is, as much as we have to interview the client also has to interview and make sure that that recruiter or headhunter is the right match. And I always say to any client, and even if I tell people, listen, we're not the right match for each other, but a couple of questions that you should ask is what is their process? Because that's a very important piece. And what we'll do is we'll say, and then they'll say, well, what are we looking for? Well, a lot of the times, we're going to post on social media. We're going to get to know your company a little bit. And then we're going to source those resumes screen those resumes, and then we're going to submit them to you. One of the things that's important, and I'm not promoting my company here at all, I'm saying in general, ask them, like I tell my team, and I'll tell my clients, is that I should never have to submit a resume to you. And so we should, or the headhunter should be, when they reach out and headhunt a candidate, a passive candidate, that's an important piece. And you should have all of the details, because you just vetted your client of why are they the superstar of their industry. So we have all of these facts. And if we can position those facts and we can build a case for a specific prospective employee, we should be able, or any headhunter should be able to submit that prospective employee without even sending a resume. If you can honestly do that, you know that you have a good match, or you should have a good headhunter. And for me, that's a very important piece. And I've been on the other side. I've been a client, and it's frustrating when you just receive literally a resume and it's like, well, I'm not sure if this is the right fit or not. Like, do I know how much money they want, or where do they fit, or why are they looking to leave their current role? Did they apply, or did you headhunt them, or just different things? So for me, that's a very important piece. So if I'm a client, I want to know, and I want to know all the intangibles, all the things that I cannot read on that resume. That's what I want to know. And in fact, the client should be able to make a decision without ever seeing a resume. I like to think of it this way, is that if you can match a client and a candidate up, and that person's never seen a resume, there's no bias in any of that. What it is, it's a true conversation of why this person would benefit your company and move your company forward, and hear some of the intangibles of how we drive to this decision. Now, best of luck in your interview. And then from there, you should coach the candidate or the client on how to have an effective interview, because there's no two interviews the same. So what I mean by that is that the days of HR hiring managers, whoever's in the process, depending on how big the company is, of running from a meeting and just grabbing a resume that your assistant printed or your admin person printed, and going down and just skimming it, and then asking the generic questions that have been rehearsed 1,000 times, that's not going to be a good interview. Usually, maybe there are exceptions to the rule, but in the past, I've not seen that benefit anybody a whole lot in the past. So my recommendation is prepare for every single interview, and you don't have to interview. So you should have, let's say it's 3 good candidates. If you have 3 good candidates and you are prepared for that interview, you should have structured however you want. Personally, I'm one that likes to structure around 3 or 4 behavioral type questions, 3 or 4 cultural, and 3 or 4 situational, and base it off of the person's profile. And I'll use that word opposed to resume and write up.
I like that.
Or profile. So, and then you can get to know the person well, but also give them an opportunity to understand if they're going to be a good fit for your company, but in reverse, if this company is going to be a good fit for them. Because at the end of the day, it costs a lot to hire. I tell all my clients, I tell everybody, that your cheapest hire is the candidate or the employee you already have. In most cases, of course, there are exceptions to the rule and situations that come up, but the cheapest employee is the one that you already have. Try to invest in that employee, and that's why regular evaluations, regular conversations, regular toolbox, team meetings, and whatnot. They're so important because we even see some people. A manager will take Friday afternoons off, and then all of a sudden that hasn't been communicated. Nobody on the floor knows who's going to make the decision. People get uncomfortable, then they get frustrated, and they tend to leave. So these are just little things. Like I can certainly dive deep into, the pillars when we're trying to coach people on, think of these things when you're putting job ads together or when you're hiring a new employee. There's 10 kind of pillars or rocks that you want to try to separate yourself on, or at least touch on. And, in your ad per se, when you put that out there, you should be proud of your organization's mission, value, culture, different things like that. And you can pack that into a backpack or a job ad without, adding, filler words. Like you can tailor it in a way where, I'm going to reach out to this company. I've heard some positives and I've heard some negatives, but I really like what I'm reading here. I'm going to reach out and have that conversation. And that's an important piece because, if it's just a job ad, you're not going to necessarily always attract the best talent. And the communication in all of this is super important. A lot of companies will be too quick in just throwing a job ad out when the reality is they might have some great people in their system already, or, what was your hiring strategy, or what was your promotion strategy, or what was your grooming strategy, or, did you have an opportunity to, what's our bench strength? Bench strength, I talk to all my clients about that, is that bench strength is what drives your business. And it's I say cheap, but it's your best way of filling a position, because if you know your bench strength, so if I look down the bench, I say, okay, this guy's retiring in 6 months. These 3 guys here have been in this department for X amount of time, and I really believe in them, but they're not necessarily just at that level. So whether you profile them, however you want to do it, there's a million different ways. But if we look at our bench strength and we can start to groom those people in, now all of a sudden it's like, I'm worried about filling maybe a lesser role. Opposed to trying to go out, find somebody in another company to try to sidestep into this same position. And now we're fighting over the exact same person. And it's coming down to money. It's coming down to vacation time. It's coming down to, in all, it's dollars and cents at the end. All of it means money. And when in all reality, you've had the right bench strength in your business all the time, you just didn't recognize it, or we were just too quick to pull the trigger and hire somebody or throw a job ad out there, which again costs money. So,
yep. Well, and another thing that you talk about is, I'm looking at my notes here, improving product profits and employee engagement by hiring rock stars and diamonds in the rough. I wondered if you could quickly, what does that mean to the people listening, to a manufacturer? Do you think people get hung up looking for the rock star and they miss the diamond in the rough? And I feel like that's probably something that you guys are really good at seeing.
So yeah, so I guess the short answer to that is we all like to fight over the rock stars because we think that gives us the identity to put us over the top and attract the right talent, maybe moving forward or whatever. But that one rock star is maybe they're a key piece in this whole thing, but that doesn't make up for the whole culture in your company. That doesn't create the identity in your company, and that doesn't give you necessarily that leverage. It might maybe propel a situation that you're trying to move forward or whatnot, but at the end of the day, it's a specific thing that rock star is going to do to help your company. That's not selling the championship team per se, sort of. The diamond in the rough is, so I'm going to go back for a second. I'm going to try to not say the name of the company here, but I deal with a very large pharma company. And in many cases, so we'll send contractors in there for maybe, 18, 24 months. One of the things that we brought back is, and it was a simple question, is as I was trying to understand a new manager or fairly new manager and the hiring practices, because this manager she was very tough on her approach in hiring, but a great person to deal with, sort of thing. So as I'm trying to understand her philosophy and where she's going and her hiring and her strategic direction, I stopped for a second and I said to her, I was like, I have something I want to ask you. Is there a specific person that has always been very reliable, really good, dependable, or somebody that is not necessarily from the industry, but I'll say, and she stopped me right up and she goes, yes, people who have worked within the agriculture industry that's worked on farms, because they work their tail off. They, for the most part, want to learn new things. They are extremely dependable because they show up every single day and they're willing to try new things. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. Well, that's easy, right? Like, in a sense, I'm thinking of this, well, we just tapped into a whole new market. Mm-hmm. But if I physically wouldn't have spent the time with this individual, we would have never unpacked that. And we would have always been fighting with the same dozen companies, 8, 10, 12 companies for the same individual and for, I'll say, a mid-level pay range per se. And now we tapped into a market where they're getting maybe $3 to $4, maybe even $5 more an hour, and they're not working outside every day, and they're not up at 4 a.m. every day, and they're working in an AC or a heated facility, and it's year-round work. So we just literally changed that whole department because we asked a lot of questions, and we were very curious to understand why her department was so different under her direction. And as soon as she said that, things really opened up, and they've become a very large client of ours, and we're very thankful. But it took us a long time to unpack certain things, but it was just that one question. And when we talk about diamonds in the rough, a lot of the time people automatically go, well, we can't find that person. It's like a needle in a haystack, a diamond in the rough. Right. Well, no, back up for a second. Diamond in the rough sometimes is just a matter of, it's not your typical sidestep in a position. It's not your typical just one level up. It could be just, it's an industry that there's some there's some value, there's some little nuggets that we can hang on to, and we can really train these types of individuals. And so for me personally, that's where I go with that. And that's how I sort of divide those two. A rock star will be somebody that you're going to, whether it be headhunt from another a sidestep, or maybe, a VP that's been, 15 years experience, for example, into a president or something like that. And where a diamond in the rough is going to be for me, it's, how do we find or tap into a different industry that we could really work with these individuals, and they might end up being some of the best people in your company down the road, but other organizations are looking outside the box, sort of thing.
I love that. Well, we're here at the end, unfortunately. And I was curious, is there maybe one thing that a manufacturer should change today to start acting more like a preferred employer? And I know it'd be hard to probably just think of one thing, but I like to give people just, a meaty little takeaway.
I think 3 pillars that I can't, just because I'm proud of our pillars and how we sort of divide this up, but 3 things that would be important for me personally would be developing a strong employer brand that everybody buys into and that they are proud of. And there's a lot to unpack in that. And like you said, we don't have a lot of time. Foster strong employee engagement is huge. Without that engagement, it's hard to find out if there's little things. Like sometimes employees will leave for the simplest or the littlest things just because it irritated them, but it could have been it could have been alleviated if you would have just had conversations. And when I say fostering strong employee engagement on a regular basis, it's okay if somebody's on the front line. A lot of times they're the ones feeding you the right information to help your company be better, to challenge your company to get to that next level or whatnot. And it's those individuals on the front line that feed you that information. But sometimes as management, we become a bit too proud and we forget the value that they have with the information that they can bring us from being on the front line. So for me, those 2 things go hand in hand. And enhancing, seeking employee feedback and acting on it. That would kind of be the third one in my mind that I think is critical. Because whether it's a toolbox meeting on a Friday afternoon or whatnot, but you can learn a lot from the individuals on the floor. And it could be something as simple as, you know what, there might be an easier way to do this. Have we thought of this because of whatever? And sometimes that becomes the most successful piece of information in your business and you wouldn't have even thought about it. But just casual feedback and conversation. And again, it all comes back to that one where communication is key.
Yes. Well, unfortunately, I have to let you go. And I've learned so much. I learned so much from watching your videos. I've learned even more from having conversation with you. And I just hope that everyone listening, if they're not already connected to you, Andrew Lavoie, that they will reach out through LinkedIn and at least bring you into their network, because you're definitely you're worth your weight in gold, and just really appreciate what you're doing for manufacturers, and just appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Allison. It was a pleasure, and hopefully we can do this again sometime.
I'm pretty positive we can. So everybody, I appreciate it. If you found value in this episode, share this with a colleague. I feel like we're all better together. And if you care to leave a review, that just lets other people know that this is something worth tuning into. So thank you so much. And until next time.
Absolutely. Thank you, Alice.
If you're not already, subscribe to the Manufacturing Masters podcast on Apple Music or Spotify. And for a deeper dive, head on over to manufacturing-masters.com. It's everything they never taught you in school.